welcome to the Property Lifestyle Mastery podcast. I'm Jackie Tomes, and I'm shortly going to be joined by my husband and business partner, David Wigram. So on this show, we're talking about what it's really like to build a property business, and a business that really genuinely creates freedom and cash flow, and what the highs have been along the way, but also the lows and the lessons that are underneath all of that, and what you've kind of got to go through to make sure you can create a property business that, for us, has given us the holiday every 6 weeks lifestyle. So we're doing everything right from big picture business strategy right down to the practical details, and then mixing it all up with the mindset that you need to develop to actually make that all a reality. On today's episode, I'll be interviewing my husband, which will be something new for us to do, and understanding where Detail Dave has come from. Like, what's his background? What made him think and act like he does today? And what have been some of the challenges along the way for him to overcome, to have the ability to create this amazing business that he has done. So get ready, strap yourselves in, and let's do this. Well, here we are. This is a bit of an unusual situation, my darling husband. Here we are interviewing you for the podcast, and we've had much discussion about how this is going to be done. Are we going to sit side by side? Are we going to go in different areas? So this is the current setup, just to show you where we're at. We are near each other, but not exactly facing each other. So let's just see how this goes. Welcome to today's podcast, where we are actually really kind of going behind the scenes with who we call Detail Dave, to understand more about, where you've come from, honey, and how your kind of journey's been up until this point in property, learning a bit more about you and some of the learnings that you've had along the way. So welcome, darling.
Hello. Thank you. What do you want to cover? What do you want to cover today?
Well, I think let's start off with a bit of an introduction about you, and maybe we can then just delve into where you kind of want to start, because I think you've had maybe a journey into all of this property stuff that people wouldn't really expect. Obviously you've come from a musician background, so we can go more into that, and then we'll talk about how you've come into property, and you've really become, in our business, they're like the detail oriented guy. Like, I'm the one with the kind of like sometimes crazy, sometimes annoying ideas and like starting stuff, but I'm not good at finishing, and you are the guy who's great at finishing. We're both very strategic, but you're very strategic from a very different point of view. So whereas I'm more like in the clouds strategic, you're more from the ground up strategic. I kind of imagine it almost like an hourglass shape. It's like, I'm here to here, you're here to here, and that's where the magic happens, right in between that. So I think it's been amazing to see how you've developed that over all these years, the spreadsheets that you've made in terms of how we work with our investors, what we've done on the finance side for the business to make sure that we can really look at our cash flow. It's absolutely amazing what you've done, and our business would not be a tenth of what it is without your input. So like, I think we should start at the musical days, darling. So do you want to kick us off with that?
I mean, I'll start at a different place from you. Let's put it that way. Do you want to kick us off with that?
Okay, guys. So you think that you are, sitting here listening to Detail Dave, the spreadsheet guy, the business guy, but who you're actually really sitting and listening to is Choir Boy of the Year 1999. Whoa, that's right, we are in the presence of greatness here. If you cast your minds back to Millennium Eve 1999, you may have been watching the TV, the Millennium Dome. There was this crystal in the middle of the dome with these lights going into it, and there were two singers singing at midnight. David Wigram was one of those such singers. So this is not the first time you have come to greatness, my darling.
Yeah, okay, so there we go. The secret's out the bag. I was indeed a young boy singer. No, it's a really cool start to life, actually. My family were all musical. My mum's a violinist. My dad was a pianist. My brother's a cellist. My other brother's a clarinetist and singer. So we kind of always surrounded by music growing up. I sang in a church choir from the age of 6 in my local church choir, which was wonderful, kind of introduction to music generally. But yeah, my I ended up being entered for a choir boy of the year, BBC Radio 2 choir boy of the year competition when I was about 11 years old, that kind of age, 11 or 12. And that, yeah, it was cool when, when sang on radio, got judged and won, and then it kind of opened up lots of avenues as well, such as the Millennium Dome. But alongside that, the nice cool thing alongside that was, prior to even doing that competition, I was already had expanded my singing to include operas, professional operas in London and abroad. So at the English National Opera, I was the one of the lead boy singer for a while there, doing all their, whenever there was a boy treble role required in their operas, that was usually me. Still had to audition for each thing like you normally would. It's just, it was, I was kind of the one of the top options they had, depending on how I looked, whether they needed a tall guy or a short guy, because even at the age of 11 to 14, I was still very tall for my age. So yeah, it was a really good start, because it kind of gave me a nice chance to experience like a professional career at a very young age. Obviously helped my confidence a lot, just being able to be under the spotlight in various ways. Helped me to have an idea of what it was to be in a professional setting and to act professionally and deal with things professionally. I also earned good money from it, so I had to learn how to deal with that money. And obviously there came a point when my voice broke, age 14-ish for me, and I was actually very relieved, because it meant I can move on to to other things. So yeah, there we go, cat's out the bag. That part of my career, it was a lovely start to life. But yeah, I also alongside that played saxophone and viola, and I went on after school to do a music degree, at the Royal College of Music in London, where I studied both saxophone and viola side by side, joint principal study. And by the end of that, I had focused my efforts towards playing in a string quartet. And that's quite a difficult career. It's very much a career of perfectionism, of continually working and striving and trying to improve all the time. So I had a 10-year career with that quartet, and even at the end of my time with them, we were still in training in essence. Like, we were doing concerts worldwide, we were doing international competitions, so dealing with a lot of the high pressure situations, and a lot of needing to perform regardless of what was happening in my life. And I do remember one of those competitions, I was out in Melbourne doing a competition. I was competing 10 days after my dad had died or something. So just having to cope with life's crap alongside performing and dealing with the stress of a high pressure performance situation was something I learned to do through my 20s. And obviously that's backed up by having to learn how to deal with performing anyway on big stages in my teens as a singer. So it was a really good practice for life generally. And I'd say that quartet career was a fantastic training for everything that I've gone on to do, because the thing about a string quartet is you are not paid a salary. You are a self-employed musician, but you've got to work in a unit in your own basically little company with 3 other people. You've got to work together, both in terms of your performance and quality of what you're doing, and how you interact relationships wise, but also as a little business. And you've got to divvy out roles for how you're growing that business together, who's doing what in terms of finding new concerts and negotiating and dealing with the organizational elements. So there's a lot of just basically parodies of a business there, just within the setting of music. And then in terms of the actual quality of what we were doing, really quartet work is all about analyzing your performance ongoing in every day, every performance, but every rehearsal session is just, we're recording all the time, listening back, analyzing, and constantly assessing how could it be better, what is going wrong, why is it not working, how do we improve this to be a better level from where we are at the moment. And that is literally so good for the brain, because you just start to learn how to pick things apart and then put them back together in a better way, which, coming back to my new career since that's why I'm Detail Dave. That's why I am where I am in the business, because I just literally took that analytical mindset to how I approached music, and I literally just transferred it straight into our property business. So it's just, for me, always a matter of unpicking what we're doing and saying, right, let's go back to the nuts and bolts. What is building this up? and how do we put it back together? How do we make it, tweak it, refine it so that it actually works better?
I think it's it's been really interesting, because I think people are often surprised when you say you're a musician. And I guess there's two things I wanted to pick up on what you were saying there. One was just what that meant in terms of like the roles that the roles that we both had when we started the business, and the other one was about the perfectionism. So maybe let's do the roles part first of all, because I think it's really interesting that we love the tool Wealth Dynamics. Maybe you could just explain a bit more about Wealth Dynamics, the tool Wealth Dynamics, and what that then meant when we sat down and took that test for the first time, and like what we thought we would be and what the reality of that was. Maybe you could touch on that.
Yeah, so you're right. When we first started working together, we divvied out roles how most people would. You're just like, okay, you deal with investors, I'll deal with deals. It was very much like just parts of the business. You deal with that, I'll deal with that. And that was how we divvied up our roles, and to help each other and support each other. And it wasn't working amazingly. It was working fine. But when we sat down and did Wealth Dynamics, so Wealth Dynamics is, for anyone who doesn't know, just a personality profiling tool that is very influenced by Eastern methodologies, and it splits down your personality into one of, I think it's 8 different areas, and it's not just one, but you actually get a shape where you see your strength in each of those areas. You can see where you're super strong, where you're super weak, and where you're kind of middle of the road. So you can really define your personality, and those elements are very much to do with where you are in your flow. So it can be very much picturing if you're in your flow dealing with people or not, but also if you're in your flow dealing with detail versus big picture, and also dealing with creativity versus just keeping a system going. So it really picks apart your personality in what we found, a very powerful way. And what was interesting for us was our personality profile didn't come out how we expected. In fact, Jackie and I took the personality profiling test next to each other at exactly the same time. And then we got our results back about 5 minutes after we'd finished the test, and they came back at the same time. And we literally thought they'd made a mistake. We thought they'd sent us the wrong test, because we took it at the same time. We pressed go at the same time. Basically, we thought they sent us the wrong test results, because I came back as what's called a mechanic, and Jackie came back as what's called a creator. And as I think most people misinterpret my previous career of music, they assume that, well, because you're a musician, you're dealing with creating music all the time, it's an artistic, creative endeavor, so you must be creative by nature. And Jackie had been in a project management role, and had very much been in a role in her previous job of kind of doing the system but make it better all the time. We thought that she'd be a mechanic and I'd be the creator, and we thought it was wrong. But then we started reading those profiles, and we came to this much greater clarity that Jackie actually is the one who loves to start things. She loves to sit down with a blank piece of paper and pull together her ideas into this incredible system or idea or strategy, like taking a load of random data in her mind and just putting a blank sheet in front of her. That's her happy place, right? Whereas for me, the creation is quite hard. That's what's actually a resistance point for me. Whereas I like to look at something that's already there and tweak and refine. And I suddenly clocked, this is that idea around my music career. I liked, I already had everything there. I knew how to play the instrument. The notes were on the page. You're not creating from fresh. You are looking at what you're doing and you're tweaking and refining, which is the mechanic profile. So we suddenly had this light bulb moment, and we looked at everything we'd split out between us. We started redivvying the whole lot, and we broke down every part of the business into multiple elements. And we started to say, well, investors, you've got many different parts. You've got the upfront meeting of an investor, and you've got to kind of talk to them a bit and sell them a bit on what you're doing. And then you've got to kind of have the whole conversations around, like getting them convinced, as it were, getting them on board. And then you've got the ongoing relationship. And we suddenly said, well, actually, Jackie's the creator. She's the upfront person. She likes to start the relationship, start things, and I like to finish them. So we started splitting out our roles more like that. And it made such a difference to our happiness levels. It was amazing.
Yeah, I think and that's been an absolute revelation. And I think actually the creator mechanic is not the true picture. And that's why I think this whole shape that you get with Wealth Dynamics is part of the genius of it. Because if you just say that you're a mechanic, it's massively underselling the overall you. Like your shape is like a diamond shape, like really, I'm trying to do this way to the left hand side, where you're strong in mechanic, lord, and accumulator. You've actually got more Lordy, I think, since you've leaned into your natural flow. That's become stronger, and I think your finishing has become even stronger than when we started, when we recently retook it. When I first started, I was actually like an hourglass kind of shape, and you were more like mechanic and a bit Lord. And actually, as you've leaned into it, you've gone really fully to the left hand side, very strong across all those three areas: mechanic, Lord, accumulator. And then as I've dealt with perfectionism, my bottom part of the shape has actually fallen away completely, and much more just at the top and shifted a bit to the left. So it's really interesting how, like, leaning into knowing who you are, you become more of who you naturally are. And I think it's been really great. So let's go on to then the other side of what you were saying, which was around this perfectionism drive that you had all the way through your life to be the absolute best at whatever you're doing. Just talk to us about how that kind of manifested itself in property, and then what that's kind of led to over the last couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, perfectionism is such a broadly used term, and a lot of people have it in various different ways. And I had it in a very strong way. Jackie and I both had it. You've had it, right, Jackson, your own way. My perfectionism very much came out in the format of wanting to be the best at whatever I did, and wanting to make sure that everything kind of went right within that, rather than say the perfectionism sitting down and wanting a document that I was creating to be absolutely perfect before I sent it out. I was happy with things being 80% done, 80% right, but it came out in different ways. And that was partly because my whole music career was designed around be better, be the best. I literally trained my mind to always want to be better, and always have this lofty goal of my idea of being successful was to be better than I currently was. And that has, when I brought that to the property business, it's very difficult to transfer that mindset to property, because in property there's so much outside of our control. Like, it's ridiculous. And learning in property to deal with, obviously I could be the best in my mind in terms of like getting better on the numbers, better on analyzing the deals, better on what it means to have a great process, like get really efficient. This all made sense to me, and I could do it. And that's like really where we put a lot of our efforts, to be really slick, efficient, very I'd say data driven and factually, making sure we had everything covered, all the bases covered business. Where you can't be perfect is when you're dealing with external parties like builders, when you're dealing with banks and what they do to us in the industry, and also vendors and solicitors and all these people you have to rely on who are totally outside your control. If you're trying and struggling to create this perfect business, you can't. In property, you just can't. Like, you're going to be constantly disappointed, which is what I found, right? I just constantly hit banks letting us down. And obviously you're making promises to people, and we're making promises to our investors and saying, right, this is how it normally goes, we anticipate this, we anticipate that, our experience says this and that. And then you find that actually your experience was right before, but it's not now, because the banks have changed what they're doing, and the bank suddenly takes 3 months to give you a mortgage offer instead of 2 weeks, or whatever it might be. Just things outside of your control constantly crop up. And for me, that took me into a level of what I learned in hindsight was constant underlying stress. I had a constant underlying anxiety around my role, and that role being like always trying to think ahead. What's going to go wrong? What can I do to try and stop things going wrong? What's the bank going to do next? What do I need to be making sure the builder's thinking about? Like, literally constant underlying anxiety, and not noticeable, because I dealt with performance stress before. I understood what it was to be nervous and stressed dealing up with a performance, and this was much less than that. So therefore, for me, my tolerance levels for stress were way higher. And I didn't even really notice this underlying stress, because I understood what it was, what real stress was, from my past role. But what I didn't realize is that underlying stress, the body is not designed to cope with that. It cannot function for long periods of time with continual drip feeding of adrenaline and cortisol, which are the stress hormones. And that has led to me about somewhere between 2 to 2.5 years ago, to me having a pretty much a stress-induced depressive breakdown. And that came out of the blue. It came out of nowhere. So it was just I was very strong and stoic about everything in the property business. Jackie always used to call me, Mr. Perspective, because every time crap happened, I'd always very quickly get to the bigger perspective and say, don't worry about it, it's fine, here's how we should look at it. And that was kind of my natural approach, was to always find a better perspective. But it didn't mean that I wasn't waking up early in the morning worrying about things. That was still there in me. So I hit literally a full burnout, where the body suddenly shut down, and subsequently found out that what happened with me. And I try and share this with everyone I can, because I was completely confused. I'd never had anything like this before. I had no motivation, no energy. Even the tiniest of things was overwhelming me. We had very little going on in the business, but the stuff that we did have going on, just printing some paperwork and giving it to a delivery driver, suddenly became a task that was beyond my mental resilience to cope with. And Jackie suddenly had to jump in and help me. I subsequently found out that the stress was causing changes internally in my chemical, how my stomach was operating, and that was causing chemical imbalances. And I found this out because we go and see a health specialist, a chiropractor, who also has other skills in other more alternative medicines. And she immediately diagnosed me within a few days of this happening. We actually had a Zoom call with her, but she diagnosed me with low stomach acid. She said the thing with low stomach acid is once it gets to a certain point, your chemicals get out of whack, and that starts to impact your emotions and your hormones. And that's what the primary reason for my state of that point, the overwhelmed depression, was. And as soon as I got onto the stomach tablets, I went back, I went from like 0 to 70% of my normal state of being very quickly within a couple of days. That was mind-blowing. The fact that I could just suddenly start taking a stomach acid pill, not an antidepressant, not what a GP would have given me at that point, just a stomach acid pill. Within 2 days, I was back to 75% of my normal resilience level. Still down, still feeling a bit, not motivated, but I could operate. And I was like, wow, how the hell is chemicals in my body and low stomach acid cause this? And since then, I've been on a journey of how can I stop this ever happening again to me? How can I change my habits, my standard physical habits, my what I'm eating, my health habits, but also my emotional habits and my self-help habits, as it were, and this journey of like, well, what else is there out there to help people to deal with just the stress of life, as it were. And it's been, that's been quite a journey. Really nice.
Yeah, I kept asking you, I was like, the first year that after you'd hit that real low point, it was really hard for me to watch, because you'd always been that strong person, and almost like overnight it was like he had gone. And it was really quite scary to comprehend like how that could really happen. And you're right, you say 70 to 75, I reckon it was more like 60% that you kind of got back to, and then it's kind of been like what the other bits are that you've had to then add on. And obviously bringing your stomach acid back to like normal levels still took like a year on like those stomach acid tablets to like bring you back up, and then the more new mindset habits that you've been doing to be able to help you to be more resilient. And I'm not sure how long ago it was that I kept saying, yeah, are you glad yet that this happened, this like low point? And I kept asking you, and I think it probably took about 18 months for you to be like, I'm starting to be willing to entertain the fact that it actually might have been good. And then it's kind of grown from there. So do you maybe want to just talk about the perspective from that point of view?
Yeah, so you're right. Obviously, it took a long time. At first, my stomach acid pills I was on, with those pills, you basically keep taking more and more of them until you start to feel a little bit of acid reflux, and you take them when you eat. And like you just take one at first, and then two, then three, until your body says, no, that's enough. And when I got there, I was up to taking 14 pills per meal before my body said, oh no, actually, that I can feel that's a bit too much acid. And that's madness, right?
And just to be clear, Dave is not good at taking pills, and before every minute I'm having to watch him try and get 14 pills down. It's like watching a baby bird have like a Dorito shoved down his mouth.
Thanks for that. So yeah, I guess my journey of discovery through that has been, I've read a lot of books, and I've read a lot of philosophies around life. I've had therapy, and we've been also playing around with our work habits, our location, where we are location wise. And I guess the self-discovery journey I've been through, it's obviously comes from so many different aspects, but they all have come together, and that's the fascinating thing I've found. It doesn't matter whether you're reading a book about Taoism, or some sort of religion, or just a self-help guru like Tony Robbins, or someone who's specialist in psychotherapy, or someone who's a specialist neuroscientist. Like, all of these people and different aspects of life, and different skill sets and different philosophies, they actually all come together and pretty much say the same things. And that's been incredible. It took a lot of, I'm a detail person, so I love to understand how things work, and really deep dive into understanding the basics of what someone's trying to say, rather than just taking their end result. So I've done a real deep dive into lots of different philosophies and ways of thinking. And yeah, end result has been a real discovery of how our perspective is on life, and the fact that we basically are in a world where everything external to us is outside of our control, and we grow up believing that that external world has a right to make us feel a certain way inside, and that we are fully subject to that we are totally out of control of our internal feelings and our emotions and how we deal with things internally, compared to when, in terms of how we deal with the external world. And actually, all of these things, it doesn't matter what it is, a philosophy, a religion, a theology, a scientist, they all say the same thing, which is, you flip that on its head, in reality, we actually have control over our internal, and that our emotions are the thing that we should focus on controlling, because we can control that part. That's the one part we can control, and the one part we can't control is everything else external. It literally flips the whole thing on its head. And the main what's the word, medicine, the main thing we can do to be happier, to not get stressed, to deal with life in a better way, and to basically flow through life rather than struggle through life, is to improve our internal environment. And the best way to do that is through meditation, because that is the one way you can just sit down and you can be with yourself, and you can work in whatever way you want, using whatever method or techniques or ideas that you want to bring to bear inside. But you can bring to bear so much, and the evidence, the power of evidence, scientific evidence out there for what biologically and neurologically changes through meditation is huge. And that's been, I think, for me, the biggest change. Is I started meditating, and I started reading these books, and through the meditation and through reading about more and more people's results, and evidence-based scientific results as well, of what I was actually doing through meditation, it empowers you to make those changes, and know that by sitting down, and literally spending that time on yourself, you aren't just wasting time. You are making internal change that is everlasting, that you are changing how you react to the world emotionally in a way that means that you will enjoy life more. And that's the whole point. And that's been one of my massive learnings the last 2 years, is like, why are we here? Like that big purpose question almost. And I've just come down to a simple solution, looking at anyone around me. Like, if you just keep asking, why are you doing that? Why are you doing that? Why have you chosen that goal? Why are you chosen that career? What's the point of it all? In the end, everyone wants one thing, and that is just to be happy. And that happiness may require certain things that make them satisfied, or feeling fulfilled, or feeling like they're serving. Like, to be happy, it requires them to feel certain things. But all of those things lead back to one thing: we just want to be happy and have a nice time. Like, everything we try and do and achieve is to be happy. So why not just work on the happiness? Why work on all the other stuff when you could just go straight to the root problem? Why am I not happy internally? That's been a massive learning.
And that's, I guess, maybe then bringing it full circle back around to the business, right? Because particularly maybe people listening in who are, maybe some of what you're talking about here is quite new. Certainly, I know that if I'd have listened to this 5 years ago, I'd have been like, yeah, very nice with your meditation. Like, I've got a to-do list, I've got a business to build, like I don't have time for that. But like, how has all of these changes made a difference to what you're doing within the business?
Yeah, so the problem with business is that we all have to-do lists that are never ending. And we all have a tendency to get too bogged down in what we're having to do day to day. And just you start to become beholden to the business needs, and you get dug deep down into the day-to-day firefighting, day-to-day detail, and you start to be basically reactive to your list, reactive to your business. And what this means is not only is your time stolen and taken away, but you start to feel like that's the only way you can operate, because you start to feel like that has to be done, and you lose sight of the bigger picture. You lose the ability to look at your list and what you're doing in relation to what the business is trying to achieve and what's actually important, and you lose that ability to say, actually, this part of my list is the part I actually need to do, and this rest of it, less important, doesn't really matter, not going to make a huge impact. I'll get to it in time. You start to feel like you just have to get it all done. That has two effects. One is it basically means that you're starting to feel guilty all the time. It drives your anxiety. It means you're less happy because you always feel you haven't got enough time, you've got too much to do, and it just overwhelms you. So psychologically and mentally, it's very bad for your emotional health and your mental health. The other side is you end up not doing the things that are actually true priorities for your business. You lose sight of the strategic goals of the business. So weirdly, you're doing more, but your business is less growing less fast or doing less well, because you're not necessarily focusing on the right things, because you haven't got the headspace, the perspective to really see it. So for me, over the last couple of years, 2.5 years, the ability to step back through my meditations has given me that space to just really always realign, always reassess how I'm approaching my task. And I tell you, it doesn't always work well. I still get bogged down sometimes, but you just have the opportunity to bring your headspace back to a place of true clarity. And you suddenly realize, you look at your list and you go, oh, all that stuff I was stressed by that I thought I needed to get done today doesn't need to get done today. It really doesn't matter. Like, it was me putting that pressure on, no one else. And if the business doesn't really need it right now, let's just focus on the ones that are important. And that way, not only are you happier, but you're driving the business in a much better way. And it means the business growth, it just explodes more exponentially. And the last part I think I've found is that you start to open your mind to much better solutions, because business is all about problem solving. You're just constantly being hit by challenges and problems. So what your job as the owner is to be able to solve them, and to be able to solve them, you've got to be in a great headspace to be able to be creative and come up with great ways of solving them. And if you're not in that right place, you don't come up with good solutions, or you don't see the solution that's right in front of you. So the ability to just see easy solutions and easy pathways and better solutions has just, maximized. It's there in front of me all the time.
It's really absolutely amazing listening to how it's all kind of grown and evolved for you and the difference that it's made. I just feel really that person who was the perfectionism for you really drove the trying to control everything, and then trying to control things that you couldn't actually control. And so therefore you were always pinning your success and therefore your happiness on external events that you couldn't control. So basically you were setting yourself up to fail and doing that time and time and time again. Whereas now I feel like you just have accepted that you can't control it, and that actually the thing that you were kind of trying to control maybe wasn't the thing that was meant to happen anyway, and that actually things that in the past you would have perceived as bad, you're now actually like, okay, actually maybe this is opening up a new route that is actually going to work out for the ultimate good of me.
I'd say that that's completely true. And I sat down the other day with someone who's going through burnout right now, and they wanted to just talk to someone who'd been through it, and they just to know how I dealt with it, and how I'd come to where I am. And I was able to, at the beginning of that call, truthfully and honestly say, right now I'm the happiest, most content I've ever been, which is incredible. And I know that that's I know that for a fact because I've got so much more perspective and clarity than I used to have. And I think in terms of this letting go of the external and letting go of the results, it's made such an impact to my ability to not just feel happy, but to perform in the business and just feel like the world is a good place regardless. And I've started to look, that 18 months you said it took before I was able to look back and say it was a good thing that happened to me. Now I look back and I say that me getting fully depressed like that and having that full burnout, was, the best thing that could have happened to me at that time in my life, because it's a catalyst for major change. And I'm now finding the perspective to look at those types of issues and challenges that happen as they occur. And that's a massive, for me, a huge success, because if I can look at some challenge that as it's occurring, that's really crap, that most people would feel is like a massive stress, and I look at it and immediately say, do you know what, this is going to be great. I'm sure this is going to be the best thing that's ever happened to me. The worse it is, the better it's going to be for my life as a whole. If in the moment, that's stressing and increase of.
So maybe one final question then to wrap us up. Maybe why are you doing this podcast now, and maybe how that links to obviously we've got this property lifestyle blueprint that we're sharing around the different areas of the business strategy, emotional, and time freedom. So why are you doing this, and how does all of that link to what you've just shared?
So we have been doing property now for 10 years or so. We've had huge growth. We've done really well, externally massively successful. We started out with a dream, like everyone does. We started out with the vision of the life we wanted. And that vision did revolve around having a great time, having an amazing life. And we were lucky enough to find a business mentor to help us to shortcut some of the stresses that other people I see having, because we started treating the business more like a business earlier on. And that was really powerful for us. But what I've learned is that we could not have the whole dream, the full picture of what we envisaged, until about 7-8 years into our journey, when I've had this change of perspective, because we got to a point where we had on paper everything, and we were able to train others in how to create that. We were able to sit down with our clients and say, here's how you set up a business, here's how you're going to make your model work, you will be able to grow with this, you'll be able to scale with this is going to give you your supposed life. And what we've realized now is that that's not the full picture. That's where our blueprint has come from, as it were, because for us it was a massive realization to say we weren't fulfilled. We did not reach our dream when we had what we thought we needed to have that dream. So this podcast, is this, for me, it's like the start of really getting that conversation out there, that realization out there that there's something else. You can do all your good deal analysis, you can build your good systems, you can get a good team in place, but will you be happy at the end? Will you actually have the lifestyle you dreamed of? No, you won't. Not truly, not unless you are also working on a different side of your mental health, your perspective, how you're viewing the world, and how you're dealing internally with your own emotional control, as it were, your own managing of your emotions. So it's like a massive awareness, and I want to get that out there. I want people to understand that, alongside obviously all the other aspects that you need, good habits you need to have in place to have a great life.
Wonderful. I think that's probably a lovely final thought to end it on. I can't believe how quickly this time has flown. Before we wrap it up, Dave, is there anything else you wanted to share before we bring it to a close?
No, not really. I think that was it. I've probably gone a bit deep. I can talk forever because I like the detail. Sorry, everyone.
Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Property Lifestyle Mastery. If you're enjoying the show, please do remember to hit subscribe and get reminded when the next episode is released each week. And if you're enjoying the show, please do also give us a little review. We'd really appreciate it and would love to hear your thoughts. If you want to connect with us, reach out through our website, www.property-strategy.com, and all of our social media links are on there too, so please do connect. On the next episode, it's time to hear from Dom. Dom has had a remarkable impact on Dave and myself, and ultimately therefore the business too. Like, our whole perspective has shifted because we have worked with him. So it's time to find out more about who Dom really is, and how he is bringing such amazing lessons and such a big difference into the world. So we look forward to sharing that all with you on the next episode.